Hey everybody, welcome to the Cosmic Perspective. On today's episode, I'm going to talk about a number of things, none of which are going to be necessarily super related, but yet at the same time, I'm going to find a way to connect them all. Why? Because that's what I try to do on this podcast. I like to talk about a lot of shit. And if anything has been clear from my podcast, I think it should be that I clearly have a lot of interest. I'm interested in a lot of things. I love science. I love music. I love art. I love writing. I love stories. I love people. I love human creativity, human potential. All of these things should be abundantly clear if you've listened to even 2 or 3 episodes of mine. That's something that I really like to talk about. I also really like to talk about politics, but not in the semantics of, what one person did, that he said, she said. I don't love that part. I love the policy stuff. I like the idea of, what could we do to craft a better world? And I've put my ideas out there. I've said it a number of times. So obviously, for me, healthcare. So I think Medicare for all is a great start, a great step in the right direction. I think another one is going to be ending the wars. Certainly reforming our prison system and our criminal justice system, because it's clearly not fair. The sentencing makes no sense. We got to do a revamp across the board. And there's a lot of things that I think we could revamp with relatively no pushback. I think there are certain changes that you could make in certain types of crimes, and then the sentencing of those crimes, that I think most people would agree with. And then the other thing is, of course, our education system, because education for me is a passionate point, because I had a frustrating come up through education, and not because I didn't go to good enough schools. Honestly, I went to pretty decent schools. I really can't complain about that in terms of I felt like we had equipment. I felt like we had tools and materials for the most part. But what I found frustrating was the actual design of the classroom. And it's amazing to me that we have not even thought about innovating the design of the classroom from a standpoint of how we learn, how we teach, how can we best adapt to multiple teaching styles. What is a way that we can teach people that isn't monotonous and boring, that is engaging, and then allows people to explore different passions that they might have. Because if we're truly setting up education for the purposes of education, then shouldn't we design a system that actually pushes people in different directions based on what they naturally gravitate towards? In the first several years of school as a kid, it's you should be exploring as many things as possible. And over time, you should be narrowing down what you like and don't like. And we should still be doing things we don't like. I think it's useful in learning certain pieces of information, activities, skills that maybe you don't love, but it's still useful for you and you will learn some valuable things from. But shouldn't we also have a system where if somebody knows that they're an artist and they know at a very young age that you can just let them do art stuff and figure that out? Whereas if somebody knows that they just really love math or science or space or physics, that they can just start focusing on that. And this is not to be confused with forcing kids to make a decision at a really young age. Not at all. I want it to be a no pressure type scenario where as long as you graduate with these certain minimum requirements, and then you have plenty of classes meant for pure intellectual exploration, and I think it's very important for us to stimulate the creativity and imagination of kids as they're growing up. And we also need to have some way to reinforce their, I want to say self-esteem too, because we need their confidence in their ability to learn these things, or to at least take on the challenge of learning the thing at a young age. Because if you teach that, you're teaching fortitude, you're teaching that ability that to keep with stick-to-itiveness, to have that all right, I'm gonna see this through even though this isn't going super great for me right now. So I think that all of those things would be dramatic in our ability to shift the culture. And I do not believe that we can create a revolution from simply passing laws. I mean, we need to do that. It needs to be part of the process. But in order for us to pass the right laws, one, we have to fix certain corrupt aspects of the system. That is clear. But then also, we need to have a cultural shift where the things that we value are the things that we then vote for. Because if our culture shifted its values from economic output, productivity, go, 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 busy, 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 I think we could entirely transform everything. And this isn't a shift that needs to happen overnight, but it is a shift that needs to start happening now. And we have a certain urgency with climate change. A lot of these coastal cities are going to cease to be viable cities. And that is a real problem that we are going to have to deal with, at least as millennials. We're going to have to deal with this shit in our lifetime. So we can't put it off. We can't ignore it. And the only way for us to really make the major change to do it, in my opinion, and this is my opinion, and hey, this is my show, so I'm allowed to give it. In my opinion, it's going to be based off of our ability to change from within. And there are a number of tools that we can utilize in educating the population in that way. Educating them in a way that allows them to culturally evolve, to see through the biases that they might come up with and find a way to change their worldview, or rather expand it, because I think that is a better term, expand the worldview to see outside of themselves. And I know that human beings are inherently selfish. It is in our best interest to be selfish because it preserved us, it kept us alive. But I think what actually ends up being the best move is to be selfless. However, if you're purely a selfish person and you don't want to help other people, then this selfish answer is actually to help other people, because then you will get better outcomes. So even if you don't do it for the right reasons, which I would argue you should do it for the right reasons, it feels better. But if you're not going to do it for the right reasons, it's still in your best interest to help other people. And the reason why is because when you don't help these people, we let them suffer, we let them just fall into this negative spiral, this negative feedback loop. Guess who's paying for it? You are. You're paying for it. You're going to pay for whatever mistakes they make. You're going to pay for their bills if we have to pick up the burden of this of these, losers in society, or these people who are, fucking terrors and assholes, and the fucking assholes that are shooting up everything. I mean, we bear the burden of that because it is a failure of the system to allow these things to even get to the point where this becomes a viable option for them. Like, at what point do we allow a situation where somebody can get to the conclusion that they want to just shoot a Walmart or some shit, And there are some people who just suck, for sure. But I think if we created a better system, and these systems are going to need to be created with algorithms, like, without a doubt. We're going to need data, and we're going to need information, and our initial ideas are not always going to be the right ones. Our gut feeling is not necessarily going to be, this is the perfect answer, we just have to do this. It's like, no, you might analyze the data and find out, oh shit, here we thought that this was the cause of this problem, but it turns out, based on the data, it's actually this. Or, we find some correlation and then we're able to solve the problem. So I think technology is going to be necessary in assisting it. But if we design systems that allow people to almost be coaxed into doing the right thing in a way that it almost becomes like such a negative cost to make the wrong decision that people just don't do it anymore. And I do believe that this is possible. There's always going to be somebody cheating the system. There's always going to be bad guys out there and bad women out there. It's going to happen, okay? I'm willing to accept a certain degree of failure. And I think we all should be able to. And also, failure is not even a bad thing. Failure is like an important life lesson teaching moment. But imagine that we can get that failure rate down to like 10% or something. It's like, so 10% of society is just leeching on society, and they're not useful, they're not doing anything, and we're basically just giving them a more or less free ride. Okay, If the other 90% are killing it and they're all being productive members of society, and not just productive, but like living happy, fulfilling lives, raising families, spending time with people and doing the things that they want to do, taking care of the environment, etc. Okay, I'll take 10% failure. That's fine, you know? And I think some people are just like, no, I don't want to pay for a single percent. And it's like, but you are, though, by not taking care of them. You know, you're going to end up paying more money by letting this person become more of a loser than stopping a loser from ever being created. And to me, this is a really obvious thing. It's way easier to prevent something than it is to treat something after the fact. So shouldn't we be focusing on the things, for example, that prevent cancer, or focusing on things that prevent other diseases rather than just treating them? I mean, we should obviously figure out a way to treat them because people get them and then we want to do something about it afterwards. But we should try to find the reasons why they're even happening in the first place, and then do our best to mitigate that from ever really being a potential possibility. And so I think the same thing goes with crime. You know, most people commit crimes because they're desperate. You know, they're not committing them just because they're just a piece of shit and they just want to commit crimes. It's like, no, they probably grew up in a shitty home. They probably have nothing. They probably were not taught good things from their parents. And that's the other thing too, is we can't rely on everybody's parents to be good parents. You know, sometimes we just have to have these public systems that we're willing to pay for that allows us to pick up the burden of a shitty parent in a way where they at least have one place that they can go where they're going to get good information. They're going to get a good point of view. And I don't think that's unreasonable. And I don't think it's asking too much to want to pay for that. I don't. I'd rather put my money towards that than bombing brown people across the fucking sea. I don't see the point. We're creating more enemies when we do that. So to me, the funding is available. It's just about a reallocation of resources. We have the money. We always want to ask, well, where are you getting the money to do education? Where are you getting the money to pay for college? And where are you getting the money to pay for healthcare? Well, where are you getting the money to bomb more people? Where are you getting the money to increase the military budget? We never ask that question. And if you notice, across both sides of the aisle, they're always willing to green light those bills every single time. And you can check the voting record of everybody. And you can see that we're almost always willing to increase the military's budget. But then we never have the argument of like, well, is that worth spending money on? And I'm sorry, but we're the GOAT, right? Like we already have, our military is so far ahead of everything else that who's competing? No one's competing. You know, we say Russia, but if you actually look at what they have, they really don't have nearly as much as what we have in terms of resources. And they certainly don't have the same kind of economy. But then again, you know, America is its own special case when it comes to that, because our economy has a real severe lack of checks and balances. And so we really allow some horrendous shit that has caused crises, that have destroyed families, you know, foreclosures on houses and bankruptcy and all of these terrible things that they happen in. Like, if that happens to somebody, that might literally ruin them and they might never recover. And are we just willing to accept people being able to have something happen to them that's larger than them, that they didn't necessarily cause, and then their whole life is fucked, and then, well, yeah, sorry, it's part of the game, dude, life's not fair. It's like, yeah, I agree, life's not fair, but we don't have to make it insanely unfair, especially when, you know, our economy's fucking rigged. Our economy is entirely rigged, and it's not a conspiracy theory. It literally is like, just look at what the bankers did. They bankrupted our economy, and then no one went to jail. They got stimulus money to try to save the banks, and then guess what they did? They just gave bonuses to the fucking executives, and no one went to jail. What? If you saw that in a movie, you'd be like, oh, fuck these motherfuckers, hang them. Literally, that's what you'd be thinking. I'm not saying hang the bankers, although, you know, but like, I'm not saying hang the bankers, but like, come on, they gotta go to jail. They should have gone to jail, and because no one went to jail, now they know they can just get away with it. And so you have things like Jeffrey Epstein, which, fuck it, let's go into that for a second. So Jeffrey Epstein, known pedophile and person who had a lot of information on some very rich and wealthy people, mysteriously killed himself. Now, do I believe he killed himself? Maybe. He might have actually killed himself. But I do believe that the circumstances of killing himself were like, hey, if you don't kill yourself, we're going to make life for your family terrible. So I don't know. There's no way that he just gets left unattended with a guard who wasn't really a guard. You know, there's too many fishy things about that story that either he didn't actually kill himself and they just straight up murdered him, which is entirely possible, as Joe Rogan would say. But I also could believe that he killed himself, but he killed himself literally like to take names to the grave, or so that his family would be okay and that they wouldn't go after him, et cetera, right? There could be a number of reasons why he might have just said fuck it and just done it. But that guy had information on some very powerful people, and they were determined to make sure he never said a fucking word. And he took the shit to the grave. And I hope that we can still find out some stuff and that they can stop the people that he was involved with, because the crimes that he committed are terrible. They're heinous crimes. Crimes that just, they make your blood boil, you know? They make you just like, how the fuck do people like this exist? And I'm glad he's dead, but I would have preferred him to rat out everybody else first. So it sucks. It sucks. It's one of those situations where if you lie in favor of the establishment, you will get away with it. But the second you are going to endanger them in some way, oh, you're fucked. You're fucked, because they can throw the boot at you. They have the NSA, they have the CIA, the FBI, you know, every major corporation, powerful people entrenched in all of these, like, you know, tycoons of industry. Like, good luck. Good luck going against that kind of power, that kind of lawyer money, that kind of resources. I mean, it's insane. So Jeffrey Epstein, rest in hell. Fuck you. You suck. But also, I wish you would have ratted out some people before you killed yourself or got murdered. Whatever. But yeah, so that part's really interesting, really fishy. You guys know me. I'm really not like a conspiracy theorist. But something like that, I mean, there doesn't need to be a conspiracy theory to know that that guy had information on powerful people, and they were determined to make sure he never said a fucking word. I don't know. Okay, so we're talking about fucking society and then the revolution and everything, and this is something that I was talking about recently with a friend of mine, and we were talking about like, well, what is a way that we can change society? So one of my strong arguments has been, in order to change society, like I said earlier, it can't really be done through laws. I mean, laws will be part of it, but laws will come after the cultural shift. And so I think in order for us to change the culture, we have to change the kind of information that is being disseminated to people. We need to change the kind of information diet that people are receiving. And getting it from 6 companies that own all the mainstream media is not going to be a way to do that, okay? You're not going to get what you need from those things. That's like eating fast food, okay? Eating fast food is not going to, it'll fill you up, but with garbage. And mainstream media is basically fast food at this point. It's, you know, short 3-minute segments. Like, the debates are a fucking joke. You know, like, you can't actually have thoughtful policy discussion in 30 seconds while somebody's trying to yell over you. You know, it's fucking stupid. The whole format's dumb. And you have things like that. And then we have things like podcasts, where you can have a long, thoughtful discussion, a fucking 2-hour, 3-hour podcast that really delves into the minutia of something if somebody really wanted to learn about it. And I think that is powerful. That is part of the fucking revolution. So I think podcasting is a huge part, just as a format. I think it'll be a game changer for the culture. I also believe that obviously psychedelics are a huge part, because that is something that can literally transform the inside of somebody and allow them to then project that out on the outer world. You know, the concept of ontological design, something that I've talked about certainly a number of times, is something that was introduced to me by Jason Silva, because he talked about it in one of his Shots of Awe. And I was like, damn, I never really thought about it like that, but that's awesome. And the idea is that I design my environment, and my environment designs me in return, and that everything is a co-creation. And that was a powerful thought, one that was amplified with with the psychedelics for sure, because I thought about that concept deeply inside that. And you feel it differently. And that's something that I think not enough people know until you do psychedelics, is like there's just this deep knowing that comes with it that makes cliches suddenly have magic, that makes sayings that sound hollow and like platitudes and everything, but they're not platitudes. You like understand what the platitude is trying to say. And that is huge. So that is a way to literally transform people's perspective, to allow people to be a little bit more open, to be more happy, to be more willing, to focus on the things that truly matter, and not just stacking up cash and equipment and things that they want. I think all of those things are, they're like false gods. You can chase them, and it's not even a bad thing to want things. There's nothing wrong with wanting things. It's just a matter of knowing what is a want versus a need. And then knowing that some things that you're going to want are not good for you. And so sometimes you're going to have to want things that are good for you in order to transform the life that you want to live. So I think that is a huge element to the cultural shift and to changing the culture. So we have information that we're taking in. We have psychedelics or meditation as ways of transforming the inner consciousness of every individual. And then having organized efforts using social media, the internet, protests, you name it, and taking these efforts and going exactly to the places in power that we need to. Society ultimately is controlled by a number of points of influence. And if you actually systematically just break down individual points, you don't have to take down the whole government to be able to do that. You can just poke at certain points that are pressure points that allow us to kind of take some of that power back. And so for me, political revolution is what I want to see. I want to see us take back the government from the corporations and give it back to the people. Literally start electing people who are only in it because they actually want to change things, rather than people who are in it so that they can get their cushy job and make some money and, maybe help the people a little bit, give them some crumbs, and then you keep the fucking whole pie. So I think that all of those things are going to be extremely important in the next decade, if not the next 2 decades. And I think we can slowly start taking back the power. I believe that we are in the second renaissance. I really do. I believe that this is going to be the second renaissance for human beings. I think that now, the time that we are in, the cultural shift that is happening, as I'm seeing it and as I'm feeling it, it's hard when you're in the wave, but I believe that this wave is happening. And you have some terrifying parts within that, but those parts are kind of necessary to grow. We need the conflict in order to level up and evolve and change. Because if everything was all peaches and roses, we probably wouldn't be changing too much, would we? So therefore, dealing with the difficulties of the rise in white supremacy or the other, cultural problems that we're having within America here due to it being such a fucking melting pot, I believe that we can influence that to push us to the next level. We use these examples of hatred. We use Trump. Trump is the perfect, he really couldn't be a better president from the standpoint of showing us exactly how shitty that position is, because he has managed to show us exactly what it's like to have somebody who isn't very good at hiding his intentions. We've had so many presidents that have been able to successfully con the American people into believing that they're doing the right thing. And Obama's one of those people. And I know that people love Obama. And I'm sorry for all the liberals that were with me up until right now. But he just wasn't that good of a president. He wasn't terrible, but he wasn't that good. And he was basically he continued a lot of the policies that George W. Bush had. He just was better at hiding it. And he was better at speaking to the people. And he certainly was a more thoughtful voice, after something like a mass shooting. The way that he talks, yeah, I'd rather would have that kind of president, somebody to be able to say the right things and make us feel better in a time of distress. And my heart goes out to all the families, by the way, that have been affected by that. It's terrible. It's terrible. I mean, the fact that we are still dealing with these shootings and we've become numb to it. I mean, I've just heard so many of them that it's just like, oh, just another mass shooting. Like, that shouldn't be normal. But a mass shooting doesn't occur without serious dysfunction in the society. People don't feel the need to go out and shoot people unless they are fucking just done. They're out. They're like out of options. They feel like they have no other choice. Now, how they get to the point where they feel like the only choice left is to shoot a bunch of innocent people, your guess is as good as mine. Part of it is them being fucking crazy. But why are they crazy? If we gave people a reasonable ability to live, wouldn't people just chill? Yeah, I feel like people are, lazy in that regard, that they would much rather, if they had a pretty decent situation, pretty decent setup, they're probably not going to go out of their way to do some horrible shit like that. And we've created this sick society that has made people depressed, and they don't even know why. It's because, their purpose has been robbed from them. And then their ability to make money and to make a living off of any sort of job. I mean, that's another part. Like, if people feel like they can't provide, that is a level of desperation that I don't like being around. I don't like to see it. I don't want to see my fellow Americans, my brothers and sisters. I don't want to see them suffering like that. And maybe I'm just more compassionate than, the fucking people who are like, nah, I don't want to pay for anybody. But at the same time, I think that that's what's going to make a better society. And is utopia possible? Probably not. But is something like good enough, reasonable enough in that direction? Yes. I totally think that is possible. I do not think that it is irrational or unreasonable to ask of these things. I really don't. And I think that we are more than capable of accomplishing these things, especially as the United States of America. We got so many people and power and resources and intelligence and creativity in this country that you're going to tell me we can't tap into the potential of that and completely revamp how we live our lives here? I think we can. And I think we're seeing it. I think we're seeing a more mindful approach for people. I think we're seeing a shift in consciousness that is allowing people to be more mindful of what they're eating, to be more mindful of how they spend their time, being more educated about, fitness and health. And, we're learning all these things. These are the growing pains of society. And we are at a point now where things are changing so rapidly that it is difficult to really understand like the true nature of everything. But we can do it. We can so do it. I just don't get it. I don't get it. I don't understand why people don't want to make life better for people. I don't get it. You know what? I just can't fuck with you. I just can't. If you want people to continue to suffer because you just don't want to like deal with the responsibility of it, then I just don't like you. I just don't. I don't know. It's funny, when I started this podcast, I really was not intending to talk about this shit. But not that I wasn't intending to talk about it, but I guess not spend this much time on it. So, in relation to the political revolution, this kind of stemmed from me reading about the psychedelic revolution of the 60s, and this all came from Michael Pollan's book. Michael Pollan did a really good job breaking down the history of it, the major players, the people that were in charge of it, and the people who, also got it illegal. So one interesting figure who I think is a lesser known figure, but maybe is more well known now because of Michael Pollan's book, is Al Hubbard. And he was known as the Johnny Appleseed of LSD. And I thought that was like, what? I'm like, the Johnny Appleseed of LSD? That's a really interesting title. But he was a guy who, he's got an interesting past and some questionable things, and people are not even fully sure of his age, although they do have it within a year or two. And he's a guy who some people believe was, in the CIA as an informant, and other people believe that no, he was like trying to disseminate the psychedelics. It's a very interesting story, and one that Michael Pollan does better than me. So I'm not really going to try to like super summarize what he did, but he was a huge believer in disseminating LSD to the elites specifically, and to allow them like as a top-down approach. The people who are in charge of the world to do the psychedelics. Do the psychedelics, and then hopefully make like major changes in cultural shifts and stuff. And I think it's a neat idea, but Timothy Leary's idea was like the democratization of everything. He liked the idea of everybody having access to it. And I think that is a more fair and more in line with what I agree with as well, because I believe it shouldn't just be for the elites. I want everybody in the world to be able to have the ability to experiment with their consciousness in a responsible manner that allows them to expand their awareness and expand their perception of the world and of reality itself. Why not? Why should people not be allowed to learn more about their own mind? And why is that illegal? Why is it illegal to want to learn more about your own mind? And I don't think those questions are unreasonable in asking them, because that is pretty much what it is. We've made it illegal to experiment with your consciousness unless it dulls you and makes you reckless, like alcohol, or if it makes you productive and stimulant, like ADHD medication, or caffeine or coffee. All of those things, like those are drugs too, or Advil, and we're able to have those. But the ones that alter your consciousness, the ones that make you question everything that you ever know, the ones that make you question whether the things that are happening are normal, or that normal even makes sense. Why are those illegal? And how come it's like as soon as a drug like that comes on the scene, then they look for a way to include it in, the illegality of other psychedelics? And it's because the government knows that they can't really stop it. They know that once that genie's let out the bottle, that society's going to change. Society's going to go in a direction that is literally not going to be able to go back. And in my opinion, for the better, but not without its problems and not without its cautions that I think we all definitely should heed. But I think it's worth it. I think the positives outweigh the negatives, and the ability for people to learn themselves and know themselves is powerful. Because when somebody knows themselves, I guarantee you're not going to deal with the problems of their insecurities. And everybody's insecure about things, okay? I'm insecure about shit too. I've got things that I am not super confident about. And that's okay. That's part of being human. That's a feeling that you're going to deal with all the time, especially in an activity that's new, or a skill that's new, or a job that's new. Anything that's new is usually intimidating, and it's scary, and it's overwhelming. There's a lot that goes on. But eventually you spend enough time on it and you learn it and you're good. And I think the same thing goes with learning yourself, because when you get to a certain point where you learn yourself, you know yourself well enough that when things come and they challenge you, you know the best way to deal with that challenge, because you understand deep inside yourself how you work and what your problems are, and maybe why you have those problems. And so these particular things, psychedelics, meditation, mindfulness, all of those things are tools that anybody can use to learn themselves. And if we don't think that is useful, and we specifically make it illegal, then you're creating an entire society of people that don't know themselves. And so then you are dealing with the effects of that, which is their insecurities being projected all around them. And that's because when you're insecure, you're going to act out in ways that you don't even understand, because you literally are blind to it. You are completely ignorant to that part of yourself, and you're an autopilot. And I don't like the idea of too many people being an autopilot, because it is way more enjoyable in life to actually know what's going on. To be in the moment, to feel the presence of presence, to feel the existence of existence, and to be keenly aware of your awareness. I think all of those things are really powerful and don't need to be illegal. Now, you can get this stuff through meditation. You totally can. And in fact, in some ways, it's more powerful that way because it is more real, it's more true, it's more coming from within. But getting it from an outside source to give you a sneak peek of what it could be on your own, that's still really powerful. And I wish that we had more access to it, because right now the only people who are able to do psychedelics are the people who are brave enough to do the illegal act of trying to acquire them. And that sucks because there's so many people who I'm sure would do it if it was legal and it was just like culturally accepted. And unfortunately, there is a little bit of that. We kind of need that peer pressure. And I don't want everybody doing psychedelics. I don't think it would be good for everybody to do it. I think some people, the moment that they're at in their life, it's maybe not the right moment, you know. Do you really want your entire reality to be shifted completely, or maybe even shattered if you're not ready for it, or if it's in a position where it's just the timing isn't right? I don't think that's good either. So I think as a tool is going to be very useful in allowing us to change, the culture. So in the 60s, Timothy Leary got very overzealous, and he wanted to give it to everybody. He wanted everybody to drop out. He wanted everybody to say, fuck the man, don't work that 9 to 5, do something different. And I love that. The spirit of it is there, but the execution of it was not. And it's what eventually caused Nixon to call him the most dangerous man in America, which is like, come on, dude, he's not the most dangerous man. But arguably Nixon was more dangerous in that time. But I get it. I understand the establishment, and I understand that they needed to preserve the status quo by any means necessary, and so they did whatever they could. And so they made those things illegal. And they stopped the Cultural Revolution from happening. I mean, it partially happened, and it spurred off Silicon Valley, and it created the tech companies that we see today. And at the moment, it's actually currently fueling them because a lot of people are microdosing at these tech companies, and it's like a popular trend. But it would be better if it was more easily accepted, if you could get it from a safe place. You knew exactly what you were getting. When things are illegal, you deal with a lot more harm problems. It'd be awesome if you just had some shit that was regulated and you could just go buy your vial of LSD at the pharmacy and you get it for, whatever reason. I'm in favor of legalization of pretty much all of the safe psychedelics. But at the same time, I acknowledge that there are risks in that, and that there should be regulations, and somebody shouldn't be able to just stack up gallons of LSD. Obviously that's fucking problematic. But people should be allowed to experiment with their consciousness and elevate their minds if they so choose. And because these tools have these amazing abilities to do these things, we need to be able to give people access to a safe environment to do it. And I'm actually in favor of it being if some of the only ways that we're able to get it, legalized is that there's some facility or something that people have to go to that's a safe environment, that you're there for the whole trip, but it's designed for the perfect trip environment, and you got clinicians and psychiatrists and everything that are hanging out there. Okay, I'll take it. That's fine. I mean, I think certain responsible people should be allowed to do it in their own home and everything. But at the same time, I'll take any steps in that direction. Because we only really need to change 20% of the population, if that, to completely transform society. I mean, how many times has the world been changed by literally one person? A lot. If you look at history, it is by no means just them. There's a lot of people that help them along the way, but then that individual end up being such a huge influence that they change everything. And we need to remember the power that the people have, the power that we have within ourselves all the time. We have the ability to be the best version of ourselves, and that best version of ourselves is the ability to influence entire groups of people, generations of people, families, friends, communities. We can change all of these things if we want to, and if we prioritize things and we decide to make it important. But it's all on us. It's all on what we choose to do. What do you want to do with your talent? What do you want to do with your skill? How do you want to give your gift to the world? And I don't know. But you know. And if you know, then you can do it. And even if you don't know, if you want to find out, that's enough. And that was something that I wrote on a recent Instagram post. And it really is that you don't need a map. You don't need to know what the next step is. You just need to know the direction you're going. You just need to have a compass. And that's something that Jason Silva says a lot, is that he doesn't want a map, he wants a compass. And I could not fuck with that more, because it just, for me, I'm like, I don't know exactly where I'm going, but I do know I'm walking in the right direction. You know, me doing this podcast, me trying to do my docuseries and all these other things that I'm really interested in making. I know that these things are in the right direction. I don't know exactly when I'm going to do what and, you know, how it's all going to play out. And I only know the next few steps that I have in front of me. But it's enough to know that I'm moving and I'm going forward. And not only am I moving forward, but I'm enjoying the journey. I'm enjoying the steps along the way. And this is something that took cultivation. You know, I had to cultivate this mindset to appreciate every little bit. And I know when I look back on these moments, I'm going to be like, damn, this was some of the best moments of my life, because, you know, there's that knowing without actually having it being real. Knowing that I'm going to accomplish these things, but then still technically being in my current reality, which is still pretty good. It's still pretty good. I really don't have too many complaints. I really feel blessed. I recently went on vacation with my family, and it was awesome. It was so nice to be with family. It was so nice to spend time with all, like, aunts, uncles, cousins. And it made me really appreciate that that's really what I care about, is, you know, family and friends and spending time with people that really matter to me. Because money is it's just a means, you know, it's just a means to an end. It's just what you need to acquire things and to pay for food and housing and shit, you know. But money's not the goal for me. Money's not like, oh, I can't wait to have this amount of money. Like, no. I can't wait to have enough money that I don't have to think about money. But beyond that, the rest of it is then, how do I spend my time? How can I make it so that I'm doing the most things that I want to do and the least things I don't want to do, and, you know, doing the things that I have to do. And I think that lifestyle is something that can be cultivated in everyone, but it takes effort and it takes time and it takes patience, and it's something that maybe not everybody's going to want to go through with, and that's okay. We can have people that just need to be told what to do. Not everybody needs to be an entrepreneur. Not everybody needs to be the boss. We need to have workers too. And as long as those workers are aware of what they're doing and they enjoy doing it, I got no problem with that. You know, I'm okay with hierarchies and the standpoint that, like, there's going to be certain people who are just better at leading. That's okay. Let's let the leaders lead. Let's let the followers follow. You know, but let's have the leaders lead people in the right direction. There are a lot of, you know, the sheep, right? There are a lot of people you can herd. Let's herd them in the right direction. We don't have to herd them into things that are going against them just because they're gullible and we'll take advantage of them. No, let's take advantage of them to help themselves without them even fucking realizing it, especially when they might actively be fighting the things that are actually trying to help them. You know, people who are against Medicare for all, unless you're wealthy, I don't see why you're against it. It literally will benefit you. Like, you will get healthcare. You will save money. There's no reason to be opposed to it. There's literally none. And if you are opposed to it and you cite some other reason, it's probably wrong. I'm just going to tell you that right now. It's probably wrong. Ask anybody who comes from a country that has healthcare. Like, they're going to tell you, like, yeah, you know, it's not perfect, but at least I know I can go to the doctor, and when I'm sick, I know I can get taken care of, and I'm not going to go bankrupt. Number one reason for bankruptcy, I say this all the time, in America, is medical bills. So, and at least those you can go bankrupt on. You know, fucking your student loans, you're just fucked. You just got to pay that off forever. Yeah, that's a whole other thing, you know. And Gareth and I talked about that on the podcast, and we said, you know, what kind of society do we want to live in where everybody's got to pay to play? And it just shouldn't be like that. And I think there are ways that we can, fix that problem. But yeah, I've already probably gone too long on this because it's just me talking, right? Oh yeah, there's a couple other things. So Chance's album, damn, disappointment, dude. Chance's album was such a disappointment, and it's frustrating because he's good. He's a good, talented artist, and the thing that he dropped was just not that good. And it wasn't even terrible. It was just like not good. And when you expect really good results from it, and then he gives you that like mediocre, it almost feels worse than just bad. And I don't even know. It's like some of his bars felt like he phoned it in. And I'm not one of those people, like, I don't care. He can say he loves his wife and all that. Like, that's awesome. In fact, I'm a fan of him being like that open about it and being that like shameless with how much he loves her. That's awesome. Powerful. More power to you. But you could have still wrote better bars though. You could have had that message and still wrote better bars. And the production just wasn't even like, it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like, it didn't blow me away. There wasn't any beats that like stood out to me. I think my favorite song on the whole thing is I Love You Always or Forever. Fucking, I can't even remember. This is how not good the album was, is that I don't even fucking commit the shit to memory. But there was like some song where it's like I Got You Forever and Always, something like that. It features like Ari Lennox and some other artists, and it's good. The hook is good. It's catchy. It almost sounds like it's from the 90s. I really liked it, but there weren't that many highlights on the album, and I love Chance, so I'm like disappointed that like I'm like, damn, Chance, I know you're capable of more. And the fact that this is the one that he considers his like debut album, like, dude, Coloring Book was your debut album. Just leave it at that. I've been listening to a few different things in terms of the music. I recently was listening to Pell, and I had heard Pell before on Brass Tracks, which I don't know if I've ever talked about Brass Tracks, but they're fucking awesome. They've got some really good songs. You should check out their EPs. Maybe I'll link them in the description. But Pell was on one of them. It was on this song called Vibrant. And so I kind of knew the name, and Apple Music had suggested a song on his album or something from it. And so I was like, oh shit, okay. So I like that. I like that song. I like that. I like his vibe. So let me listen to the rest of the album. The whole album is dope, dude. The whole album is like super dope. And I think there's a lot of really catchy songs on it, and the production's really good. So like I listen to an album like that, I'm like, oh, this is awesome. And then I listen to Chance's, and Chance is way bigger than Pell. Pell's a fucking nobody compared to Chance. And then Chance's album was that disappointing. I'm like, fuck. And I don't know. I mean, I've been listening to a lot of things that aren't necessarily hip hop lately, and more like R&B or like jazzy, and I've really been enjoying that. And it's funny because like my dad is so like a jazz, like he loves like that kind of music, and I feel like I'm in some ways becoming my dad with that kind of stuff, and like the type of music that I like to value. And obviously I have a more millennial perspective on the type of music I'm listening to, and I have a sheer exposure to more music than any previous generation ever did, because you have things like Spotify and Apple Music and SoundCloud to be able to expose you to all these different artists that you never would have heard of before, when you had to rely on literally a physical disc being given to you. And that's cool. I mean, this is why I think we're in a second renaissance of things, because you're seeing art being disseminated through the speed of light in the internet. Then you're seeing music being disseminated through speed of light in the internet. And you're seeing all these things that are now anybody with a decent microphone, or anybody with a decent camera, or anybody with a decent phone can fucking make a podcast. I'm shooting this podcast on my phone. I've gotten so many comments lately of people thinking that I have a team. I'm like, dude, what team? It's just me. I literally am the one who records all of this shit. I set up the lights, I record it, I edit it. There is no team. I'd love to have a team. If anybody wants to be on my team to help me make this, more power to you. I would love it. And if I get to a point where I could pay you, I would love to pay you. But at the moment, it's just me doing this. And this is the power. Now, is this hard? Is this taking a lot of time and dedication? Yes. This takes a lot of dedication. It takes a lot of time. I spend hours editing these things. And it's just because it's not because it's hard. It's because it's just a long form piece of content. So it's a lot of editing. Luckily, these solos episodes are a lot easier because I don't really have to edit them as much as just, cut up the snippets. But like all of those things are things that we take for granted. We don't realize just how much power we have with the tools that we have available to us. And we kind of don't really see some of the tools that we have as genuine, viable options for creation. And I think we're going to start seeing more and more prosumers, as fucking the people call it, where, you're not just consuming the content, you're also creating it. And I love the idea of more and more people creating content, more and more people creating different things, using their creativity and allowing themselves to unlock the full potential that they have at their disposal. And even in things that aren't art, different trades and skills that you can genuinely market and get a following online, and I think that that's really cool. So I really want more people to just be them and be authentically them. No more facades, no more fake social media versions of yourself. Just fucking be you, be present, and spend time with the people you love and do the things that you like doing. And if you're not doing the things that you like doing, then you need to change something so that you can do it. Because if you're spending, like Alan Watts said, if you spend all day doing things you don't like doing, that is to go on living, to go on doing things you don't like doing, that's stupid. It's literally stupid. You're spending your entire time doing something you don't like doing to make money, to then go on to do what? You don't even then get that time back because you traded time for money. And sometimes you got to trade time for money. It's part of life. But then there are other times where don't take that trade. Take the time back. Spend it how you want it. You'll get the money later. Okay, I'm done. Bye, everybody.